Carrie was too big for this to happen to her.
On the evening of August 21, 2024, a deadly argument erupted between 40-year-old Carrie Harden and her husband, a man known in the community as a pastor, but soon to be known for something far darker.
We're not interested in a building, but we are interested in you seeing Jesus in us. Seeing him in such a way where it provokes you to change. Very recently on this corner, I preached from the subject, aren't you tired yet? You ought to be tired of seeing the community be in the way that it is. With a church on just about every corner, the homicide rate continues to rise, and still, for most of us, we do nothing.
Fueled by alcohol and rage, the tension inside their home on Merlin Court Northwest in Fayette County reached a terrifying climax. In a sudden, brutal outburst, the pastor shot his wife multiple times, killing her in cold blood. But the horror didn't end there. In an attempt to cover up the crime, the pastor dragged his wife's body to the back of their home, set it on fire, and buried her in a shallow grave right in their backyard before attempting to flee.
Basically, two calls at the same time that the cadaver dog located our victim, which was buried in a very shallow grave on the back part of the property.
But just when it seemed he might disappear for good, authorities received a shocking confession that would change everything. This is the life and death of Carrie Harden. This story takes us to Fayette County, Georgia, a place known for its quiet neighborhoods and low crime rate. The county usually reports a violent crime rate that is well below the national average. But this facade of a safe place does not mean it is void of crime. In 2024, Fayette County saw an alarming spike in its crime rate, with 7 homicide cases happening in the first half of the year. And as time passed, that unsettling pattern didn't stop. In fact, it only grew worse. Something that would reflect on the tragic case of Carrie, who became part of that rising statistic. Carrie Harden was born in 1984 and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. She left a lasting impression everywhere she went. Kind-hearted, nurturing, and always looking out for others. Friends and family often described her as warm and deeply compassionate, the kind of woman whose presence brought comfort and peace. One defining aspect of Carrie's personality was her unwavering faith in God, which shaped everything she did. Her spirituality guided her values, influenced her choices, and was a constant in how she lived her life and chose the people she surrounded herself with. But it was also this unwavering faith in choosing her people that led her to a tragedy. While details about Carrie's early life and education are limited, her upbringing was clearly reflected in her passion for helping others. With a heart grounded in service and faith, she pursued nursing and became a licensed professional, a career that felt like a natural extension of who she was. Carrie found her professional calling in healthcare and worked as a registered nurse affiliated with the Nurses EARN IT Medical Staffing Group. Her coworkers described her as someone who embraced her role effortlessly, blending her compassion with professionalism.
So the most impressive thing about Carrie was she always wanted to improve on things.
She handled the demanding nursing hours with grace, often putting others before herself. Patients and colleagues alike could see her commitment, not just to medicine, but to healing. Her work wasn't just a job, but an extension of her identity as a caregiver and servant to her community. But while Carrie gave so much to others, her own world, once built on love and faith, was beginning to crack beneath the surface. Carrie was married to a man named Kenneth Harden Jr. They tied the knot on May 13, 2011, and from the outside looking in, their marriage seemed picture perfect. Kenneth seemed to be the kind of guy any one woman would want to settle down with, especially for a woman like Carrie, who values faith and character. He was a pastor, widely known as Pastor Ken, and had built a strong reputation in St. Louis for his street-level ministry.
We had become immune to the killing, to the abuse, to our children who day by day lose their lives.
He wasn't the kind of pastor who stayed behind a pulpit. He went where others wouldn't, preaching in rough neighborhoods, connecting with people through raw honesty and messages of hope. But behind this facade of a good man, he was hiding a sinister nature that would not surface for so long. Kenneth's devotion and charisma drew Carrie closer to him. Their love blossomed into a 14-year marriage that appeared picture-perfect from the outside. Together, they raised 2 sons, who quickly became the center of their world. Carrie poured her heart into raising her boys, instilling in them not only the value of love and family, but also a deep spiritual foundation. She taught them about God, encouraging a personal connection to faith that mirrored her own. To those watching her life unfold online, everything looked beautiful. They lived in a big house, had a stable income, and shared sweet moments as a growing family. On social media, Carrie often painted Kenneth as a devoted husband and a loving father. She regularly posted heartfelt tributes, especially on Father's Day, thanking the man she believed stood strong in his morals and walked faithfully with God. But just like any other couple, their relationship wasn't without its cracks. Carrie and Kenneth had their share of arguments. Still, no matter how tense things became, they always seemed to find their way back to each other, to mend what was broken and move forward together. But one day, things would take a devastating, abrupt turn, one that no one could have expected. On the evening of August 20, 2024, everything would come crashing down for the Harden family in their home in a neighborhood in Merlin Court, Northwest, Fayette County, Georgia.
It's shocking as hell. Definitely seemed like something that would be on on one of those shows. I didn't expect that. He seemed like a cool dude. Like I said, he had a fireworks show down here for the kids before the 4th of July.
On the morning of that day, an argument sparked between the couple. The details of what those arguments are remain unclear, but it would become a day-long feud between Carrie and Harden. What Carrie didn't know was that this argument would set off a chain of events that would lead to a devastating outcome. As the night progressed, Carrie and Kenneth started to drink heavily, and as they did,
I never imagined that something like this would happen to Carrie. You know, it's like, no way.
the argument that they had on that morning only continued to escalate. And wow, the influence of alcohol and rage, things started to become violent. The argument continued, and in the heat of the moment, something sinister in Kenneth awakened, and the unthinkable happened. Fueled by alcohol and a blinding rage, Kenneth snapped, pulling the trigger in a moment of uncontrollable fury. The shot hit Carrie, and she collapsed instantly. Just like that, her life was gone. Once Kenneth realized the gravity of what he'd done, panic took over. But what he did next was even more horrifying. He started to panic, knowing he had done something he could never take back. As fear and guilt took over, he began thinking of how to hide what he had done. He waited until early morning, hoping the quiet would help him get away with it. While his 2 young sons slept inside the house, just steps away, he rushed to clean up the blood. Then he dragged Carrie's body outside into the backyard. In a moment that's hard to even imagine, he set her on fire, burning the woman he once claimed to love. When the flames died down, he buried her in a shallow grave like she never mattered. All of it while his children slept, not knowing the horror that had just taken place so close to them. But just when it seemed like the horror had ended, Kenneth did something even more disturbing. He acted like nothing had happened. After burying Carrie's body in the backyard, he went on with his day as if everything was normal. He got his sons ready and dropped them off at school, hiding the truth with a calm face. But underneath it all, he was unraveling. The weight of what he had done was too heavy to carry alone. So, he made a decision. He booked a plane ticket for his father to fly into Georgia, planning to meet him at a local bank. Kenneth needed someone to talk to, someone he thought he could trust. The plan wasn't just to confess, it was also to hand over control. Kenneth wanted his father to take care of the boys and manage his finances, because he knew the police would eventually catch up to him. This was his way of preparing for the fallout, but what he didn't know was that that meeting would mark the turning point in this unfolding nightmare. His father arrived, unaware of what lay ahead, and they made their way to the bank to transfer control of Kenneth's financial assets to his dad. His dad was nothing but confused as to the truth of what was happening. It was suspicious for his son to act like this. And so, he did the brave act of asking his son what was going on. And Kenneth's response was something that no father would ever want to hear from his own son. It was there that Kenneth admitted the unthinkable. He told his father he had killed Carrie the night before, claiming it was in self-defense. With that, Kenneth would now run and hide, trying to stay ahead of whatever might come next. After hearing all this, Kenneth Sr. pretended to support his son just long enough to get away, but as soon as his son disappeared, did something unexpected. At 11:00 a.m. of August 21, 2024, Kenneth Sr. made a distressing call to the Fayette County authorities, one that would set everything in motion.
He had told his father that he had shot his wife and pretty much that he was now going to be on the run.
Harden's father called the sheriff's office, who began investigating.
Deputies were quickly dispatched to the Harden residence in the quiet neighborhood of Merlin Court, Northwest, Fayette County. From the outside, the property looked peaceful, well-maintained, and nestled in a serene cul-de-sac. But once investigators stepped inside, the calm exterior was shattered. The scene inside the house told a completely different story. Officers immediately noticed evidence that aligned with Kenneth Sr.'s shocking claims, signs of a physical struggle and areas where someone had clearly lost a significant amount of blood. Though Kenneth had tried to clean up the aftermath, it was obvious that the job had been rushed and incomplete. According to Fayette County Sheriff Barry Babb, investigators quickly determined there had been a serious incident involving blood loss and that someone had made a sloppy attempt to sanitize the scene. Then came the shocking discovery that confirmed everyone's worst fears. Cadaver dogs led officers to the backyard, where Carrie's remains were found buried in a shallow grave, partially burned and hidden under debris. It was a gruesome discovery that erased any hope that this was just a misunderstanding. The reality of the crime hit hard. What seemed like a simple domestic dispute had turned into something far more violent and premeditated. As the investigation deepened, the neighborhood and wider community struggled to process the horror that had unfolded in the very heart of their peaceful suburb.
On one of those shows, I didn't expect that.
Jabril Muhammad says he would have never expected his neighbor, 39-year-old Kenneth Harden Jr., to be accused of something like this.
He seemed like a cool dude. Like I said, he had a fireworks show down here for the kids before the 4th of July.
Investigators began a meticulous sweep of the property, going over every inch for clues. Surveillance footage, along with physical evidence, quickly helped them reconstruct what had taken place. And as the pieces came together, one disturbing truth became clear. A heated argument had turned violent, ending with Kenneth killing Carrie and scrambling to erase the evidence. At the same time, detectives knew there was another priority. They needed to ensure that Carrie's children were safe. Officers reached out to the school and confirmed the children were unharmed. When asked about their mother, the boys said they hadn't seen her at all that morning. The last time they remembered seeing her was the day before. Back at the crime scene, something strange stood out to detectives. What stunned investigators even more was the extent of surveillance around the home. From nearly every angle, the home was being monitored. Police concluded that Kenneth had likely been watching live footage from a device, which meant he knew they'd be closing in on him soon. And while investigators expected a slow, brutal manhunt, what happened next moved fast. They anticipated a drawn-out search, but the opposite occurred. Another set of detectives working behind the scenes quickly made progress tracking him down. Then came the major break that changed everything. Using license plate recognition technology and assistance from the Louisiana State Patrol and the St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office, officers located Kenneth at a motel in Covington, Louisiana.
Babb says a license plate reader helped them track Harden's car to a motel in Louisiana. A SWAT team there moved to take him into custody while they searched the large property for his wife's body.
A SWAT team surrounded the building and arrested him without incident. But what they found when they took him into custody added a chilling new layer. Kenneth was heavily armed at the time of his arrest. Investigators later learned that he had contemplated ending his own life by cop, but in the end, he gave up peacefully. After Kenneth was taken into custody, Fayette County investigators traveled to Louisiana to question him and arrange for his return to Georgia. He didn't resist. In fact, according to authorities, he was fully cooperative. He was being held at the St. Tammany Parish Correctional Center as a fugitive from justice until his transfer was finalized. But even with his cooperation, the damage was already done. As of now, Kenneth still hasn't been officially charged with murder. Authorities suggest he may face voluntary manslaughter, punishable by up to 20 years in Georgia.
Fayette County Sheriff's investigators are currently in Louisiana interrogating a man accused of killing his wife at their Fayetteville home.
But given the effort he took to hide the crime, flee the state, and hand off his children and finances to his father, harsher charges may follow. This was not a panicked mistake. It was a cover-up. And back in Fayette County, the ripple effects of that decision hit hard. 2 young boys are now without either parent, one dead, the other behind bars. Relatives have taken them in, trying to offer a sense of normalcy in the wake of chaos. But the trauma is irreversible. Those boys didn't just lose their family, they lost their safety, their home, and the version of their father they thought they knew. The community was left stunned.
Fayette County Sheriff Barry Babb says in his almost 40 years of law enforcement experience, this is one of the more grisly crimes he's had to work with.
Kenneth was supposed to be a man of faith, a pastor, a father, a neighbor who set off fireworks for kids just weeks before. But behind closed doors, things were unraveling. Sheriff Barry Babb, a veteran of nearly 40 years, called this one of the most disturbing cases he'd ever seen. And perhaps what makes it worse is the illusion that everything had been fine. The case sparked conversations about what truly led to the tragedy, whether it was alcohol, stress, or a moment of rage.
It's shocking as hell. Definitely seemed like something that would be on on one of those shows. I didn't expect that.
Jabril Muhammad says he would have never expected his neighbor, 39-year-old Kenneth Harden Jr., to be accused of something like this.
However, the hours Kenneth spent cleaning up, burning Carrie's body, and burying her while his children slept raised further questions. His decision to fly in his father and hand over custody of the boys and his finances suggested a level of premeditation. In the end, 2 young boys are left to carry the emotional weight of the situation. Children of domestic violence often face lifelong emotional scars, impacting their trust, safety, and sense of security. Thankfully, the boys were physically unharmed. They are now in the care of family, and a GoFundMe has been set up to support their future.
He had told his father that he had shot his wife and pretty much that he was now going to be on the run.
But the goal of $300,000 0 cents remains far from met. What they need now isn't just money, it's healing, stability, and hope. What happened to Carrie Harden is more than a headline. It's a reminder of how fast control can turn to violence, and how abuse doesn't always look the way we expect it to. Her death, however, stands as a haunting symbol of how even the most nurturing spirits can fall victim to control, betrayal, and violence. Let us know what you think about this case in the comments below.